Welcome to part 4 of the Game of Thrones bracket, otherwise known as the final part in round 1. These are all the matches we've done so far. We've got 4 more to go in round 1. Let's knock them out. Alright, for our first match of part 4, we have Jon Snow versus Robert Baratheon. So this one's kind of tough, not because the answer isn't obvious, but just because with Jon, we don't really know what his peak is. We've seen what his peak was in the show, but in the books, we really don't know. He could be Azor Ahai, he could be the prince that was promised, whatever. What does that mean for his strength? Who knows? What we do know is Robert, in his prime, was one of the strongest warriors in Westeros, and it ended the Targaryen dynasty, so I am going to have to give it to Robert on this one, just because of the unknown of Jon. Alright, next up we got another fun one. We've got Mance Rayder versus Thoros of Myr. Just a quick recap, Mance Rayder was the leader of the Free Folk, when he was assembling them all to take them, south of the Wall to flee from the White Walkers. And then Thoros of Myr was the Red Priest that worked with Beric Dondarrion and was responsible for keeping him alive, essentially, during the war. But I think this just has to be Mance Rayder, because the thing with being the leader of the Free Folk is the Free Folk really value one thing more than anything, and that is strength. You cannot be a leader of giants and Thenns and everything else, in the north without just having raw strength. And not to mention he was a Black Brother for a while as well. And Thoros of Myr is always very strong, and he has some of the magic from the R'hllor god on his side, but I do think just the raw strength of Mance Rayder would prevail. Alright, for our penultimate match of the first round, we have Brandon Rivers, aka Bloodraven, versus Ned Stark. Alright, this picture is misleading because obviously this is not Bloodraven in his prime, but this is how he's depicted in the show, because Bloodraven's prime was, around first Blackfire Rebellion and afterward, and, he was a pretty fierce warrior. He was one of the Great Bastards. But, Ned, also a very great warrior in his own right. Ned did allegedly defeat Arthur Dayne in combat at the Tower of Joy. Now, the circumstances around that are a little weird, so it's kind of hard to say. This one's actually really hard to call, but I have to go with my gut here, and my gut is saying Bloodraven, so I'm gonna go with Bloodraven. And finally, the last match of round 1, Loras Tyrell, aka the Knight of Flowers, versus Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. So this is just another case of we'll never truly know their peak. Both Loras and Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight were both fairly young when they were not able to fight anymore. One because Aemon was dead. But obviously, I think Prince Aemon got way farther along before he died than Loras did before he wasn't able to be Kingsguard anymore. So yeah, it's 100% just Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. I mean, one of the most, if not the most famed warriors, knights in the history of Westeros. He just wins out. And just like that, round 1 is done. What a round it was, truly. Take a look at these round 2 matchups we're going to have. There are going to be some bangers, so please stay tuned.